All right, so this is intrapreneur versus entrepreneur. I was originally supposed to, the tables were turned a little bit, but then apparently I quit. Now I'm unemployed, so I'm neither one of them. So we got you two.
What are you, an entrepreneur?
Yeah, entrepreneur. So really, tell us a little bit. Why don't you go, Gary?
Okay.
How did you kind of get here? How did you start?
Well, when you suck shit at school, entrepreneurship is usually a good option. And so growing up in the 90s when school was thought about in a different way, I mean, I got here because I sold lemonade when I was 5 years old. There's never been an option for me. I didn't do well in school. I could never imagine working in a company. I don't think that's bad. Just how I got here was, it's been my behavior since I basically could talk, And so being an entrepreneur, long before I knew what that was, or definitely long before it became cool, has been my only option. So how I got here is hard wiring and great nurturing by my parents.
Shing, what's your origin story?
Okay, so how I got here. I took the 2-3 subway, but the truth is I came about it a slightly different way. I came at it from, I'm one of 10 kids, so I'm number 8 in the food chain. It's very hard to be recognized anywhere when you're in that cluster. And, I came from the school of hard knocks, had a very bad car accident when I was a kid, and my parents basically said, hey, let this kid do whatever he wants to do. And that was the opportunity that I had, because normally in a big family, you're not going to have the opportunity to do anything. You're going to get caught in the rut, and you're going to follow the trend of the rest of your family, really. And I'm the only one of us. I'm the only Shing that's actually living overseas, that's, traveled extensively. And, the truth is I fell ass backwards into it. And whether it was entrepreneurship or intra, which of both sides of the fence I've been on, it happened by hard work. It happened by, actually getting yourself in a position where, one, the opportunity of trust existed, and the second thing was just making sure you seize the opportunities and craft them to exactly what you want it to be. It to be, not the craft itself, but what you wanted out of it.
So,
does that make any sense?
That makes a lot of sense, of course. I think that why, it doesn't make sense?
No,
Go, Gary. No, please. Enter some tension.
Genuinely just trying to get a couple laughs.
Okay. Okay, I tell the joke, Gary.
Sorry.
So Shingy, we're throwing around this term, intrapreneur. Do you believe that there is such a thing?
I do.
Talk to
Yeah, I don't think the term is right. I mean, I don't think it, I don't know if it is a term, but the idea of having freedom thinking inside an organization to either be a change maker and or help pivot some of the businesses is absolutely needed and is real.
You think it's a real thing, Gary?
Yeah, I think that there
Although these guys have access to huge resources, they have brands, they get paychecks. I mean, they're not every single day out there worrying about...
Well, hence why the term isn't entrepreneur. There are a lot of people who have some level of entrepreneurial tendencies within an organization. I think I've been out there a lot on this debate, and I just don't think you're an entrepreneur if you work in a company. I think it's just not the definition. But having entrepreneurial tendencies, and both of you have absolutely displayed that in your careers from afar. I know that very closely with you, less with you, but it's obvious. And I even have executives here from my company, and they all run the gamut. Some people, I think there are people who have entrepreneurial tendencies within an organization. I do believe that the bigger the company is, the less appetite that organization has for those people. I think they have a nice value prop for a little bit of time, but I do believe the more entrepreneurial you are within an organization, the more likely that relationship will end eventually because it is a conflict of DNA within that structure.
Yeah, I would say potentially. I think that I would agree with all of that except for the DNA piece, because typically, I'm assuming in part of that discussion you're talking about perhaps an acquisition. So typically the founders will,
But within that acquisition, I think it's a great point.
Yeah.
In the startup world we know so well,
Yeah.
I have so many friends who are entrepreneurs. They decide to take lots of money. Let me save you time. The Dollar Shave Club founders leave the day they're allowed to leave and got all their money.
Yeah.
Like, no, not always. I mean, first and foremost, this is a top-level.
Well, they were rich. What would you do? I'm like, I'm out. I'm rich.
But again, I think these are dangerous conversations because the truth is, it's an individual thing for everybody.
Absolutely.
You plan on leaving after 3 years and you get paid out, but something happens in your family life and you don't want to go have another entrepreneurial venture. You like the comfort of doing nothing in a corporation. I'm serious. Like, these are real-life scenarios, and I see people shaking their heads because it exists. Some people plan on getting paid out in 3 years, and after 18 months are suffocating in doing nothing and the horseshit of corporate America and decide to leave early and leave money on the table. I think that, there's a lot of those things, but I think the punchline of the conversation is the only interesting debate in this world for me is people who wildly want to consider themselves entrepreneurs when they're working inside of a company. To me, that's not real. But entrepreneurial tendencies in companies, this, that, and the other thing, yeah, absolutely.
It also depends on how the company's structured, right? So if you're going to take an organization that decides to have an incubator, to throw that term, and say, we're going to invest in this company, we're going to figure out that it could go into the free market if it wants, but we see a need, we actually want to build this separately, we're going to do all the things that the market's going to judge it upon, and if it doesn't work, we're going to cut it off. The real problem with that, though, typically, is that people have a bad problem of shutting it down.
That's entrepreneurial tendencies.
Yes, indeed.
Anything that has a company that is on top of you is just not entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is fear. You know what being an entrepreneur is? You can't blame anybody else. You can't blame the holding company.
Yeah.
You can't blame, when you look, you're like, oh, fuck, I'm last.
Yeah.
Right? And so, yeah, there's extreme, and by the way, when you build brand within an organization, they let you do a ton of shit, but there's a big difference between signing the front of a check and signing the back of a check.
Did you work on that?
No, but it was fucking good.
But it was really good.
D-Rock, we need an Instagram.
Somebody write that shit down? Yeah.
That's a first timer, but that felt good, right? I like that one.
good.
I literally said it because I literally said it because I fucked up on, I'm always signing the back of a check because usually my dad or AJ have always been the front of a check, and I got a bunch of checks to sign for Vayner employees and actually endorsed them, and then everybody was laughing. And
I think you're just trying to take their money.
Probably, but I genuinely believe that. I believe that some people have ungodly amounts of room to have those tendencies and room to do their thing. But when literally, if I went to sleep for a year, we'd be out of business. When the buck stops with you, it's different. And some of the people in this room, as I look around, there's a big difference between being the child and being the parent. It's just a big shift when you start tasting that. And I just genuinely believe that. But I do believe there's enormous room within organizations to have those entrepreneurial tendencies. I think it's a good ground to learn things. I think you are a good example, but I think you are an entrepreneur now. It's on you. And I think...
Yeah, no shit. This shit, I'm like, whoa, wait a second. There's no more paychecks? What happened? What happened?
Right. And so I think because you did a lot of entrepreneurial-like things within a safe environment, it got you closer to being willing to make that jump, much further along than you were 5 years ago. So,
but that's why I think the topic, it's a kind of a visceral sense for me, is that it's not a debate. It's not a one versus the other. It's also got to do with the characterization of the people.
100%.
I have tons of examples I can explain of people who have been acquired. This had a great idea. They brought it into a business. The business said, couldn't give a shit about it. I'm going to absorb this into something else, spin it out here. And they're like, oh, that doesn't work for me. But there's a massive opportunity within that organization to represent it in a different way. And they go into a field they never could have done before. Conversely, on top of that, you've got all these people who are introverts, who can't express themselves and think, gee, I have this great idea. I'm not going to go out there and kickstart the shit out of it. I'm not going to go out there and try and get friends and family funded. I don't have that risk mentality, but I have a great idea. How can I get this thing funded inside an organization that gives me all the componentries I need? Because 90% of startups fail. And so do you want to take that on? Maybe. But here's the other thing that's interesting. Within 5 years, most companies, I would say half, 48% or something I was reading recently, don't last 5 years. So at that point, it's like, well, hey, big organization isn't bad for the tendencies of certain people that want to be able to feel like they can get the stuff that they would like to get done outside of a free market.
I think the two big words that for everybody sitting here that you should debate is really self-awareness and regret. I think those are the two words that thematically play out for me if I'm sitting here and deploying empathy on whomever and whatever you're doing. One, do you just know yourself? I think one of the really scary things that's happened in the last half decade is people think they have to become an entrepreneur. It's so on trend. It's so what you should do. And, you know, I think a lot of people are leaving a lot of money on the table by not being a number 2, a number 3, a number 4, a number 11, because they're awesome at that. It's a very different game than being the founder of something.
Yeah, totally.
And then I just think regret, right? Like if you went the other way and you've always been in a company and it's always kind of been there, like your grandma was an entrepreneur, you kind of like, you're like maybe, like you just want to be, you really want to try to project that when you're laying there at 95, you're not like, fuck. Why for just those 2 years didn't I start that peanut butter company or, you know, knitting thing? Like, I think those are the two things. If I thought about two words.
Big markets.
Peanut butter, dude, for real.
They're both big, listen, big markets. I mean, the amount of people that.
I just did that to get a laugh, okay?
That's fine. Respect.
Kinda.
To me, those are the two words that I would be playing over and over. Do you actually know yourself and know what you're good at and what you're built for? And 2, do you feel comfortable that you won't look back? Everybody here, and there's some youngsters in here, but everybody here is already sitting with 2, 3, 4 things they can think of very quickly that they regret right now, already. You got a lot more life to go, and right now you feel okay because you got a lot of life to go. But if you spend time with people in their 80s and 90s, the thing they will absolutely teach you if you really dig is regret fucking sucks. And so that's the one thing I would hover in the back of your mind as well.
I'm not gonna. You know, part of the well, I saw market opportunity. I think there's a huge opportunity that I'm chasing. But part of it was also just that thought in the back of my mind was, you know, if not now, when? And I'm young enough. I've gotten to a place where I don't, you know, and so I said, fuck this.
And stuff.
And it wasn't to be honest. Let me just say, I've had one of the most blessed careers that I could ever have imagined. I reached C-level at a very young age in a large organization. I had love there. We got to do some of the best things on the planet. So I actually think that there are careers to be built inside of large organizations that are spectacular and amazing. I think the most important thing that people have to do, what we talk about all day, is be deliberate about building those careers. If you just go inside of an organization and hope that you're going to make it to the top, then you're fooling yourself. It's just as bad as trying to start a business without a plan of how you're actually going to, or at least some semblance of thought of what you're going to do.
You got to reverse engineer the finish line.
That's exactly what you have to do, and that's the only, I hope you guys leave with that today. Hey, culture. So first of all, he said, you know, founders, they get bought, then they find out this horseshit, bullshit, politic culture. So clearly he hates big organizations. How important is culture in terms of actually provide? Is it nature versus nurture? Is it more the person, or is it more the culture of the organization? Or is that not the right debate either?
Well, that's a great question, B. I think it's a combination of both.
Did you just call him B?
I did. Is that a problem with you?
No. Just trying to get clarification.
Yeah.
He just said that for a laugh. We've all got laughs in now.
Oh. These are pathetic jokes, man. This shit's not landing.
Yeah,
Let's just get that straight up, man, for real.
Really bad jokes. Okay.
I think it's part of it's a trifecta. I think it's part of the DNA of the person, the organization where it's at with its own culture, and is it changing, and what's the culture of the environment around it. Because organizations today can't innovate to save their lives, typically, so they go and acquire companies, and that's when that whole sort of trip of it was never going to be a perfect fit, but it sounded like a great marriage, and that's why they all leave. But if in the climate where we are today, where everything is a beautiful change agent, it can happen. I think it's a trifecta. You have to look at those three things. But to Gary's point about the risk, the part of it is, look, man, when I was starting to build technology out, it was expensive. Things were expensive, you know. It was really hard to write code back in the day, and Java was the pants, but there were 3 people on the planet that could write that damn thing. So it was expensive. Today, it's not that hard. So you can get up and skin your knees a few times. You can run a business out of your bedroom at night. You can actually balance 2 careers because we all live in New York City and we don't want to, you know, it costs shit to live here, man. And so it's really hard to counterbalance that. So you need to risk reward. And at the same time, you need to mitigate that by saying, what is the aspiration of what I want to do? Because I can tell you now that, you know, some of these startups don't succeed because they don't have a co-founder. They just have a founder. And that founder sets what is the charisma and the culture of that organization. And hopefully the lieutenants can do that. But they probably don't feel entrepreneurial in their business because they're employed by it unless the co-founder allows it to at least have this juxtaposition from what I can see. But I think a part of it is, to answer your question directly, it's more than culture. It's more than the DNA of the person. It also has to be the right time and the right environment for that to happen. Because if it's all about sort of a soft market that's all fabulous, then I don't think any of that really matters.
Then you don't suss out.
No.
And what about inside a company like AOL?
Yeah, culture is great. And you don't see that externally. but internally the culture is amazing. For 5,000 people, and it's an incredible culture. And Verizon have been intelligent in keeping that culture separate because it's a very different type of culture when they acquired AOL. But it's been a pretty amazing melting pot, because what's interesting is we're a house of brands. So every single brand you represent, if somebody was in here from HuffPost, they have a totally different attitude than somebody who was in here that is from TechCrunch or Engadget. And we try and promote that, and that's what the business is about. The culture of administration, when you get to the Inc. level, which is the organization that sort of helps all the HR componentry and finance and all that crap, which gets very less interesting, that's when that culture has to be, is it about bottom up or top down? And that's when the debate gets interesting.
So Gary,
Yes.
what can you learn from an intrapreneur? Is there anything?
I'm sure.
I just haven't found it yet.
No, I mean, are you asking, like...
Yeah, I'm just curious. Is there lessons for an entrepreneur to learn from an intrapreneur?
I love this guy whispering, nothing. I think my answer is right, which is I'm sure. I mean, this is a tough question for me because I think, no question, my biggest weakness, period, is I'm so insular within myself. I don't even pay attention to what other entrepreneurs are doing. I definitely am not going to pay attention to what intrapreneurs are doing. And so my way of process and learning, well, I don't know if he said it wasn't a term. And so I'm sure, I just don't know, because the way I learn is doing stuff and test and learn and ideate and pattern recognition. I'm not a good learner by watching anybody else whatsoever.
Gary, who's your second in command?
At VaynerMedia today,
Sure.
I would say it's Claude Silver.
Okay.
She's our chief heart officer. I think when you have 700 employees and you're selling people, that's the asset. And so when you were talking about culture, I was laughing because you're like, it's awesome. I'm like, I wonder what the other 5,000 people think, right? Because culture is a one-person thing.
That's right.
And so when I think about culture, I'm sure you agree, like I know that we're trying so hard, way more than norm, but I don't know what it means to all 700. We ask, and we're counter-punchers. We don't push it, we respond to it. And so at Vayner, it's Claude Silver as Chief Heart Officer. Then I would say it's James Orsini, who's our Chief Operating Officer.
What's a bigger business, Wine Library or VaynerMedia?
VaynerMedia.
And so I watched you grow that from 12 people.
Yep.
That was the first time we kind of worked together as
That's
12
right.
people. And I've kind of understood some of the pain that you've gone through, but what's been the hardest thing about that? What I really want to say is, you've operated smaller businesses. What's it like to actually run? When you walk into the new space, you're blown away. What is it like to operate?
So far, so
That
good.
size of a
I mean,
business.
the hardest part and what it feels like is the same answer, which is how do you get buy-in at scale? It's a lot easier to get 30 people to buy into you and your vision than it is 500 and 700. And it's fun for me to see 4 or 5 of them in here, and they're all in different parts of their career at Vayner right now and different challenges or opportunities.
Did you ever have to think about mapping people's careers before?
I've always thought about that. I literally reverse engineer every single person. I have context of how they came from, the conversations we've had, who their mentors were before, what they thought. Emily's mom thought that we were some mafioso thing. I know who Sam's mentor was. I understand where Lisa worked in a traditional agency for 14 years. I know that Garrett went to the same school as my children. Like, I know shit. Like, I am the head of HR, CEO. And so always, Wine Library, VaynerMedia, and everything I do forever, it's only a people game. Everything else continues to get commoditized by technology. This is a human thing. We are humans. We are the ultimate species. We've won. It's us. And
Amen,
we are the game. And so, yes, I have thought about that. I think the reason we built one of the fastest growing agencies ever is because of that part of it. The biggest challenge was getting buy-in, knowing that at 200 people, there were so many people that didn't believe me, that thought, oh, tomorrow I'm going to do something bad, or I'm doing this because I want to buy the Jets and I don't care about them, or whatever it may be. And it's been a lot of fun for me because now we're a little further along, and everybody who's been waiting every day that it doesn't switch, it doesn't turn, it doesn't become about the money, they aren't forced to do things, we keep listening, it's like gaining trust, right? And so now we are much tighter and stronger at 700 than we were at 250, which is usually the other way, but that's what happens when you actually double down on it and when the stories translate. And it's not always perfect. Even the people in this room, it's not clicking perfectly right this second, but you put in the effort. You put in the effort, and you play a forever game. You treat them just as well on the way out, and forever, and help, and it's a people game. Yeah, I've always thought that. It's really the only move I've got.
I can attest to that.
But by the way, that can also happen in an organization of
That's what I was
5,000
gonna
people.
ask, yeah.
It's the same dynamic. And, the giggle about culture, amen, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it is about the individual, and it's how you reflect the culture and the opportunity within it. And it's true, man. You never understand the warts of a business until you're on the inside.
I have a lot of empathy for AOL and other companies. My biggest advantage, I don't feel like I'm a hero with culture. I feel that I'm not a publicly traded company.
Right.
My ability to not worry about 90-day terms and numbers allows me to spend money to make it better. Like, it's, at the end of the day, the culture and the way it is the CEO's fault.
Yep.
Period. The buck stops with somebody, whether an entrepreneur or an organization, but she or he has a problem. Irene has a problem. Wall Street cares every 90 days, and she has to play that game. And so, like, when I want to invest in an account or a person or the culture, it's easy for me. I look at myself in the mirror while I'm brushing my teeth, and I say, I'm going to do that. And that's where it starts and ends. That, being independent and entrepreneurial, is amazingly incredible. To pull that off at an AOL organization takes so much more effort, because you do have to factor in the financial aspects so much more. When you're an entrepreneur and you're building it for yourself, it's forever. It's like parenting. You want to do a great job because it's forever, right?
You are, though, a big part of AOL's culture. You are...
Am I?
Well, I mean,
I'm nodding, but I'm like, am I really?
Yeah, no, but I mean, you inspire internally, externally. I've seen how AOL rallies around you. Are you cognizant of that? Do you think about that? Are you consulted about culture? Or are you just shaping it? I mean, like, just...
Yeah, I think part of the dynamic is it happens by default. It depends on the character. And I think that's how it happened in the AOL David Shing situation. Because my job originally, when I came in, was head of media and marketing, dude. It was a totally different gig than what I do today. But what I do today was my part-time gig, because they took away my marketing budget, and I need to get on with some shit. And that's the way that's the way the business worked, man. I'm like, I'm not going to accept that, so we need to move on to something that feels very...
Did you just keep making pretend that you still had the budget?
No, I'm good.
Yes.
No, let's sit. I'm still... Yeah. Well,
but that's
anymore.
also...
This is live stream.
And that's also... That's trust within an organization to say, yeah, this is going to be change. And that change is for good. Especially for a brand that needed to pivot at that time and have change. It needs change. And so, yeah, I am consulted on it. I work on it. I do a bunch of work people don't know inside the organization. I mentor a ton of people, and part of that is to make sure that we have other people that are recognized in the organization as being valuable to the organization for what they provide. They just don't typically have a platform, but that platform has been built over time, and that is just part of a reflection of the climate that we're in and the ability to do it within the business that I'm in today.
Yeah, I agree. I think...
You did the same thing with Mondelez, bro.
Some days. No, some days I'm like, oh no. No, it's, at some point in time, when you become a public spokesperson for an organization, you begin to realize that you are shaping culture and that you have responsibility. So I want to, we've spent the whole day talking about career development, how to, those kind of things. So any advice? So you have people starting their career. What advice would you give somebody starting their career versus later on in their career?
It's so hard. I mean, as I continue to do more of this, and I know a lot of you, and I see a lot of you, like, it's just unbelievable how one-on-one all this shit is. I mean, what advice I give? I don't know. I need to listen to you for fucking 4 hours, and then I maybe have something to say of value, right? It's really easy at Vayner because I have so much context on them. But what would I say? I would say themes. I'm obsessed with self-awareness. I'm obsessed with it. Like, if you genuinely know who the fuck you are, so much better shit happens in your life. Like, it's such a big deal. I would say that, here's something, I'm trying to think of something valuable to say. I think this is valuable. I think the biggest mistake I see in today's world is a lot of people here are making decisions about their careers and opportunities based on the world that we live in right now and aren't doing anything about projecting where the world's going to be in 10 or 15 years. So I don't know if you have that skill set to make assumptions or need to consume content, but to make a decision about, okay, you're self-aware and you created the finish line and you're going to reverse engineer into it. Something you need to do is also figure out how the world around you is changing in that 10 or 15 year period. I have so many young executives and individuals at Vayner, so many of them are making decisions. I'm like, you know what happens when you fall in love and start a family, and like, just to not project the variable changes is a huge mistake. People are making, these are the company's biggest issues in today's world. We're just not projecting. You think a lot has happened in the last 10 years? Wait till you see what's gonna happen over the next 10 years. Like, there's so much change coming to all of us. And so understanding that is super important.
Can I add this? I'm going to add 3 things to that if I can jump off that, and they're a bit like this. I would say that self-awareness does not come when you're young. It comes over time, once you've actually experienced something, to understand what you should be self-aware about. That's one thing, is to understand at least what that means. And so I would say, become a generalist, not a specialist. So you'll come into and look for organizations where you can come in and say, hey man, they brought me in to be a planner, but what I really want to be is a writer. And maybe you have the ability to sort of go become a generalist, and that becomes very important. It becomes a better rounded person, and maybe you make a jump at some point to become a pure entrepreneur, or in Bonin's case, an entrepreneur. So what I think is interesting...
Or unemployed.
That's my
it's a fancy word for unemployed.
The other thing is, look to the top of a company, not their job, but look to their life, and see whether that's the life that you want. So if a CEO is awesome, but they've had 4 or 5 divorces and they've got a ton of kids from different women or whatever the hell happens, just figure out whether that's what you want. And if that's what you want, that's cool too. But I learned that really, I learned that when I was really young and thought, maybe that's not for me. And so that's just a reflection of the character of the people that you associate with. So that's really, really important. And I would also say that, you know, the last piece about that jump point is, if you have to be crafted by people around you, make sure that if you are starting out early in your career and you're looking for a mentor, that never happened for me, but be a bloody great mentee first. Not expect somebody mentor. You have to be somebody that people want to value, to actually associate with, and that's where it comes from. That's the people game, I think.
Q&A?
Yeah, so I was going to open it up. But I want one last question for both. But I'm going to open it up to Q&A right now, except for my one last question. You said regrets. Just give me one regret that you have, outside not investing, but I mean in terms of...
The first 5 years of my marriage, I worked too much, and Lizzie and I should have taken at least 8 to 10 more vacations and had that quality time. And it's my biggest regret, but it's allowed me to adjust considerably once we started having children.
Learning to speak Chinese, because that way I could have spoken to my dad.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's deep. Okay, questions. There you go. The mic was right there.
That was awesome.
The mic's right here.
Yeah.
Best execution ever.
I'm a career coach, and I work a lot with the media community, and one trend I see is that a lot of people are reluctantly being pushed into becoming entrepreneurs, meaning their full-time gigs and the old way is dissolving, and they're facing a situation where they have to go become an entrepreneur, and they're uncomfortable. What advice do you give for the reluctant entrepreneur?
To go get another job. I mean that. I mean, like, people, like, the world changing and people losing their jobs because the world changed is the most consistent thing that's happened in our society. Like, shit changes. Like, being a farmer was super awesome, or being a dock worker was, like, it just happens. It'll be forever that. I think entrepreneurship has been put on such a pedestal that they're considering it more than the people that got pushed out in the 80s. And so I think really making sure they understand, like, getting a different job is not a horrible option. And so I really believe that.
I'll take a slightly different approach just because I can on this particular topic, and that is, don't take another job, but look to all the passions that you have and determine whether the sum of those parts could be greater than the whole of one job. So you could be a photographer, you could actually do collab in terms of fashion. There are a number of interests that you could do. You could be a musician, and all of those things together, if you cuddle it all together, does that make it a livelihood and a career, and does it give you definition that you stick out for? And I'll give you this just as an adjunct to that. In Australia, there are, in a sport of Australia...
Where's Australia?
Yeah, nice, dickhead. So what's interesting about down in Australia, we have professional cricketers and professional footballers, and at some point in time in their career, they get to a point where they are fully professional, and they have to choose which sport they really want, but they haven't chosen until they get to a point where it's like, I think I'm better at cricket. So, you become a generalist, not a specialist. That becomes that.
I'm gonna jump on that real quick, though. That's fine and dandy, and I believe in that more than anything, but people have mortgages and college debt and things of that nature, and I'll tell you another thing that I absolutely want to shed more light on. we have had a lot of very quiet suicides in entrepreneur and tech land over the last 2 or 3 years, because we've painted a picture that everybody can be an entrepreneur and be successful with it. And when they fail, because it is very hard, and it is an absolute skill, they feel like they're failures because the media and pundits and this ecosystem has said, you can do it, we can all do it. And it really crushes them, because the one thing that you have to understand is when you fail as an entrepreneur, you failed. When you get fired, it was fuckface Charlie's fault. He had it out for you, right? And so I will say, yes, but we have to be very careful about what's been going on. There's a lot of this going on in our underbelly, and it's not being talked about, and it's not in the best vested interest of the VCs, and it's not in the ecosystem right now, and it's super painful, and I feel a humongous sense of responsibility to start talking about it, because I am an entrepreneur, because I do love it, but I do think we have to deploy self-awareness. And like, if everybody could make money doing the thing they love the most, taking pictures, playing video games, they would do it. You should try, and you should try from 7 p.m. to 2 in the morning, you know, because you have plenty of time. So I think we need to not make the binary jump of job and entrepreneur. We should start auditing how much time we spend on watching entire seasons of House of Cards and playing Pokemon Go. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, you can do that now after you get your paid, money for those things to live. And so there's a level of practicality that needs to re-enter the ecosystem. And because Wall Street and central banks and governments are not creating meritocracy and keeping everything propped, there's confusion out there.
Well, and anxiety, man. It's a whole nother level of where that confusion goes. So good luck with that, sister. Life coach, brilliant.
In the front.
Where are you going? Over here?
And you can bring the other mic to him right
Thank
now.
you.
Who had your hand up?
That's him.
Yeah, okay, right there.
This is probably one of the greatest panels of all time. What's up, Gary? How you
Hey, man.
doing?
How are
I've
you?
been
Second,
watching
you
you
were
for a
saying that
while.
about me earlier.
I did. I said
Gary's
panel. I
here.
included you. I included all of you.
God.
So you touched, Shingy, you touched a little bit on mentorship and being a good mentee.
Yeah.
And I'm really, I'm just starting my career, so I'm always seeking new mentors and people to learn from. So what is the best approach to reach out to someone who you know? And a lot of people are always busy, and you have life, you have, your business, all this stuff. What is the best way to reach out, and the best way to become a person who's more coachable and, to be more of a student as you grow?
Yeah, I'm sure Gary will have some advice on this, but let me tell you from a real practical perspective. One is do your research to figure out why that person's an interesting mentor for you and what your approach should be, because you've got to pitch them, man. And it's like going to a job interview. The first thing you should do at a job interview, in my humble opinion, which I haven't done for 1,000 years, so I'm just going to make this up, which is ask them why you've been brought in. To put them off, say, oh God, I've had to read this person's CV. Okay, let me just figure this thing out, man. And so I think that's part of it, is pique curiosity, but also be very, very succinct in your ask. The last thing you want to do is say, can I just pick your brain? Oh my God, no. I don't want to have my brain picked, bro. It doesn't work like that. But what does work is that if you put something in a subject line that feels like something that's really interesting for me to grab, or if you read no further than this is what so you have to do the research, and it has to also jive with the person that you actually want to be mentored with. Because you don't want to go through this, I'm going to learn who you are, I'm going to be very empathetic. No, I'm not. I'm going to be very cut and dry, because we're all very busy. And that's how I think of it. What's your advice, man?
My advice is
Do you do a lot of mentoring?
to the people within my ecosystem.
700 people at Vayner.
I mean,
Did you hear that?
I struggle with mentoring even the people within Vayner. To do it for an outside force is impossible. I would never, I don't have any mentees that are outside of the Vayner ecosystem or investments I've made. You've got to be in it to do that. I don't even have enough time to do it for the people that deserve it. And so I think you have to provide value to the other person. And just people are tone deaf with this issue. Like writing something clever in the headline, every day 50 people email me, I'm going to help you buy the New York Jets. And then it's give me your money and this investment will do, or I'm going to buy you lunch. That's what I fucking want, lunch. So I think really trying to provide value, and some people try to provide value, but they're tone deaf. They're like, I need 3 hours of your time and $100,000, and I'm going to give you this Jets pin. Actually trying to provide value.
That's good counsel.
Big time. The other thing is being relentless.
Yeah.
Like, asking once and not getting a reply from me is a bad strategy, you know? Because number 13 might be the time to do it. But it also has to provide value. So, like, I think people are really misplaying this game because they're selfish and they're tone deaf.
I 100% agree. I think that add value, know what the person cares about, what they're
Which is the only way you
focused
can add value.
on. And
like-
so,
That's right.
and make sure the message says that. Like, if you watch anything I've been talking, I'm like talking about messaging. If somebody's like, hey, I got something interesting around real estate, I'm probably like, oh, not really right now. But messaging probably, you know, and I would say the same thing Gary said, is that if you're going after somebody who you know is inundated, you have to be relentless. And people are like, how do I get in touch with you? I texted you. And I'm like, well, you texted me one time. Like, you know, and God knows when you caught me, I probably was on a plane. And the moment I got off, it was like, and your text was like, you know, I'm happy you texted me and I really want to get back to you. But right now, you know, but relentless. And I will tell you, oddly, because and I don't know if you and Shing feel the same way, because I get so much inbound, I'm actually okay with people being relentless. Because that 13th time, I'm like, you know what, dude, I hear you, I feel you, you were really serious about this, boom, 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 here's the thing. The other thing I was going to say is, sometimes everybody's like, can I have coffee, can we have lunch? Time is so, you know, it's so precious, it's so hard.
It's the most important.
It's the most, but if you text me and say, look, I want some advice, or here's some value for you, but I also want some advice, and we can do that over text, or if the engagement can be lightweight enough for me that I can do it without it crushing my, you know, other time, and at the same time, it can provide a valuable service on the other end for you, if you feel that that can provide value, then that's another way too. Anyway, okay, we got...
Yep.
Good call.
All right.
Say your name, actually.
Cool. My name is Jelani,
And what do you do?
and I'm a social media coordinator for a nonprofit.
Okay.
But my question has to deal with what Gary said about failure. So I know that whenever an entrepreneur fails, there's something to be learned, right? So my question to the panel is, what is the greatest thing that you've learned from failure?
For me, professionally, my failures have been very I've got one failing move, which is I've got big eyes. I think I can do everything because of the energy I have, because of the ego that I have, because of the work ethic that I have. I just fucking think I can do everything. And so my failures have been trying to go too wide and not going deep. Every time I've gone deep, Wine Library, my personal shit, VaynerMedia, I dominate. Every time I go wide, and you know, and it's always you know, it's a pendulum, right? As soon as I go deep for 2 years, I need to go wide because I'm an entrepreneur, but I will lose every time. And now at least I know through 3 or 4 cycles that I'm just doing it more as an entertainment value, but this money's going away, and this time will be wasted. But I still need it, it's still my oxygen. But the thing that I've learned is not to spend as much time and as much money, because I'm gonna lose, because when I go wide, I lose.
The answer to that question, when you talk to personalities that are very similar, is the same. So, you know, I've experienced exactly the same thing, dude, which is a bit enough too much. And that is very, very hard to pill to swallow. It's also very hard to recover from. So, you know, it does give you very good focus on self-awareness, but at the same time, man, it is hard to recover. So you have to learn, you know, from my perspective, is how do you mitigate the risk and make sure that you're able to...
Why is it hard to recover? Because it's super easy for me.
No, because, well, for me...
I'm being serious. Like, losing, like, I think entrepreneurship is like UFC. Like, everybody loses. Like, I have no stigma to the loss.
Yeah.
I don't want to let other people down. That's probably where I spend the most time on. But, you know...
It depends on the size of the... depends on the size of the fail.
And
so
it
if you lose
depends on how many oars you have in the water.
Well, and if you lose your job, your relationship, your financial commitment to stay in the organization or the country, and you lose your visa, all of this shit may have happened to me in the past, so it's a little harder to recover from, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not like
Absolutely.
falling over and skinning my knees,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, from a failure standpoint, the one thing I would say, me personally, has been not being sensitive enough to where the organization is at, from big not being sensitive enough to where the actual organization is at. And I think one of the things that, and I don't, it's going to be weird because at the same time I think sometimes if you work inside of a large organization, you have to have blinders on and you just have to go after what you know is right and just push to the end. But at some point in time, you do have to stick your head up and listen, and I don't think I've always listened enough. I bite off more than I can chew. I'm just used to it. That's just kind of what I do.
Yeah.
But That's the one thing I would say. Anyway, okay, 2 more questions.
No more questions?
Well, 1 more. No, come on, 1 more. We have 10 seconds.
8.
All right. We'll go ahead. What is it?
You can chat out in the hall.
What is it? Go ahead.
I quickly want to know your feeling on solo entrepreneur versus co-founders.
Yeah, they said
I feel
that.
like VCs, et cetera, they all want to see co-founders. I'm a 15-year entrepreneur like you. I sign both sides of the check.
Yep.
But people talk about slot now. What do you think?
I think you should not listen to anybody, ever, forever.
Quick answer. Oh, there we go.
Thank you.